My Lord and my God, I firmly believe that you are here, that you see me, that you hear me. I adore you with profound reverence. I ask your pardon for my sins and the grace to make this time of prayer fruitful. My Immaculate Mother, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me. By now we know how much the Lord loves to open horizons. Jesus, it is so wonderful to imagine you, so many instances of your public life, entering into someone's life, shattering their constricted vision of things, and ushering them into a whole new vision of their life. Take, for example, that wonderful scene of the Samaritan woman. As far as she was concerned, she was going to the well one day again, day after day for so many years, the same thing, not expecting anything unusual to happen. And then that one day when you, Jesus, stepped up, looked into her eyes, and you said those magical words, "If only you knew the gift of God and who it is who is speaking with you." With those words, Lord, not only did you open new horizons, you liberated her, you set her free. She was never the same. It is the very same thing we read in today's gospel. That moment there at the northern shore of the Sea of Galilee, those fishermen who were so tired, exhausted, really finding themselves in a rut, we could say. And then you walked up to them. You asked Simon to put out a little from the land as you got into his boat. You sat down and taught the people from that boat. Then you said to Simon, "Put out into the deep and let down your nets for a catch." We can imagine Simon doing a double take or a triple take, saying, "What?" But he saw that look in your eyes, and he had that instinct, this is something very special. And so he followed your instruction. "Master, we toiled all night, we took nothing, but at your word I will let down the nets." The resultant catch far exceeded his wildest expectations. There were so many fish that those fish filled 2 boats. They began to sink. Then those magical words. Jesus said to Simon, "Do not be afraid. From now on, you will be catching men. Your life will take on totally unsuspected proportions." This really reflects so many moments in our own life. Moments where if we were just to continue on our own little world, we could end up remaining at the shallow end of the pool, so to speak. When we listen to you, Lord, and grab onto your inspirations, it is only then when we discover new dimensions to our life. This is what St. Josemaria was getting at in that point number 96 of Furrow. Do not be narrow-minded men or women who are immature, short-sighted, and incapable of embracing our supernatural Christian outlook as children of God and daring. Launching out into the deep means attentively listening to the Lord's inspirations. Sometimes those inspirations involve a major decision. For example, the call to embrace a vocational path, the call to make a moral change in our lives, or to take on a difficult task. What a shame if we were to turn a deaf ear to those inspirations, because that could mean turning away from the path that the Lord wants us to take. Or as one writer puts it, speaking of turning away from that inspiration, from the outside, our lives may go on looking the same as before. But inside, something profound has changed. Ordinary lives continue, but the gates close, the pathway vanishes. Launching out into the deep always involves taking a risk, whether big or small. That is the way we grow. One writer puts it this way: when you explore boldly, when you voluntarily confront the unknown, you gather information and build your renewed self out of that information. Much of you is still nascent and will not be called forth by staying in the same place. In other words, we still have qualities, talents that we have not yet discovered. They are still nascent, we could say hidden, and we might never discover them if we never take a risk, if we stay in the same place. And so this author continues by saying, you have to take risks. Venture out into the unknown. Otherwise, you remain incomplete. And who wants to wander through life incomplete? Our life becomes especially interesting when we realize that the Lord is calling out to us in different situations throughout the day. Sometimes in big things, but quite often, most times, in small things. He wants us to venture out into the deep rather than remaining stuck in what we could call a rut. Each of us has regular routines, patterns of behavior, and those are typically good. If we had to reinvent everything every day, it would be exhausting. But one thing is having a routine. A very different thing is allowing those routines to devolve into ruts, getting stuck in a way of doing things. For example, so many people have developed a so-called routine at the end of the day of saying to themselves, well, let me wrap up the day by just checking a few YouTube shorts, scrolling quickly through TikTok or Instagram. And then, of course, 90 minutes later, they are still looking at their screen. How do we take a risk? By going to bed, by very simply going to sleep. Other people have the routine of relying on TikTok for what they might call cultural reading. How do they break out of that? Read a book. We can put down the phone, remove the earbuds, and actually speak to the person sitting next to us in the office, in the classroom. We don't need to get into the rut of listening to Looney Tunes while walking to work. We can, because we are free, break out of that rut and pray a part of the rosary. If we are in a rut with regard to the way we deal with our parents, siblings, your spouse, what a great thing to take a risk, so to speak, by thinking of ways of surprising them. So many people get in the rut of procrastinating, putting off week after week that very simple action of making an appointment to see the dentist. How do we break out of it? Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m., no matter what, I am going to make that appointment. And even more important, week after week, yes, I really should make that reservation, sign up for the retreat. Let's do it today. These could strike you as so simple, ordinary, unimportant. But the fact is, if we allow one defeat after another, day after day, that becomes a deeper and deeper rut. It becomes harder to get out of. And all the while, the Lord is saying, duc in altum, launch out into the deep. Mary, you who noticed that very small detail at the wedding feast at Cana, they have no wine. You took a risk. You said to those servants, do whatever he tells you, without knowing how our Lord would respond to that. Help us, day to day, to launch out into the deep. I thank you, my God, for the good resolutions, affections, and inspirations that you have communicated to me in this meditation. I ask your help in putting them into effect. My Immaculate Mother, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me.